And the last 2 years he was at Florida, and from 2021, what, guys, 8-9 years since then, since 2014 or 2012, I think. So over 10 or close to 10 years, Corey Raymond was the DB's coach or corners coach at LSU. We have talked about Corey a lot, and there's one thing that I have said, and I'm not going to turn away from. I'm going to continue to say what I've been saying. Just to refresh what has happened in the defensive back room under Corey Raymond since, let's just even use the national title team in 2019 when he was here at LSU. In 2019, LSU was 51st in passing yards allowed, 127th in 2020, 91st in 2021, 74th when he went over to Florida in 2022, and 70th this past season. I do think that there are, if you have concerns about the Corey Raymond hire, considering what has happened the last 5 years, whether it be just on the field or even some of the recruits not completely panning out maybe the way that you thought that they would. I don't blame you in having those thoughts. I don't blame you in having those concerns. I would have those concerns too, because when I look from 2019 to 2023 at what that unit that Corey has coached since that time frame over the last 5 years, 51st, 127th, 91st, 74th, and 70th in passing yards allowed, I do think that that's a very big question mark to say to yourself, hey, can Corey come back and change that room? Now, the reason, as an example, the last 2 years that you've gone in the portal for DB so much was because either one, the mass exited that you had, and two, because that position group over the last couple years in Corey's tenure was not recruited at a high enough level for it to be sustained. Now, I don't think all of that is his problem. We have talked about this. Do I mind Corey being back? No, I don't mind it. I just think that there are question marks that you have to, if you're being objective, have to look at. Now, the argument that I've gotten from a lot of you, if there is an argument that I've gotten from a lot of you, is this. Well, Blake, the last 4 years, the last 4 teams that he was on, they had chaos all around him. They weren't good football teams. Well, neither was his position group. It's not as if that he did not recruit at a high level. Now, Bo Pelini, the 127 year, I would make an argument, okay, that a lot of that doesn't have to do with him. And I could make the argument it doesn't have a lot to do with him. It had a lot to do with what Ed was doing. Ed wanted to run man-to-man coverage the entire time. But halfway through 2021, something changed. Oh, yeah, that's right. Ed Orgeron was officially announced that he was going to be fired, and Durante Jones started calling different defenses. Nothing got better. Now, I know that Derek Stingley did not return after Central Michigan. I do know that Elias Ricks did not return. Allegedly he was injured. Ironically enough, didn't get injured at Alabama, nor did he get injured this year when he was in the NFL. I digress on that. But nothing got better. You were still 91st. Actually, after Ed, technically from a statistical standpoint, after Ed was released, you, by a stats comparison, I guess you will, or what you want to call it, got worse. Here's where I fall on Corey Raymond potentially or obviously being set to come back to LSU. I don't mind it because I do think that recruiting gets better. I think that you have DBs that are inside the state of Louisiana right now that you can go and get and recruit and get to commit and sign here. Corey can recruit. I don't think that anybody has made the argument that Corey can't recruit. You sure as hell haven't got it from this show. You probably haven't gotten it from any other show. But I do think that there's something to be said that can Corey, and I think it's the biggest question mark that he has to answer. Can Corey come back and get you back to where you were in 2016 when you're 19th in the country in passing yards allowed? 2017 when you were 18th in passing yards allowed? 2018 when you were 30th? Not the best, but you're still in the top 30. He has brought in, recruited, and developed a lot of guys here at LSU The question becomes, how do you break down and look past the last 5? Because there have been a lot of coaches that have had a lot of success, specifically in 2016, 2017, 2018. Hell, even 2019. I'm going to make a comparison. It's not really a good one, but I know that a lot of you, as an example, are not high on a guy like Dabo. Stay with me. Blake, it's apples and oranges. You're right. It is apples and oranges. But in 2016 to 2018, 2019, Dabo Swinney was revered as the second best head coach in the country behind Nick Saban. Why? Because he was winning national titles. He was getting the national titles. Hell, we played against him in 2019. What are your thoughts about Dabo Swinney right now? Well, since 2019, Clemson has been on the decline. Now, parts of that has to do with NIL. Could make the same argument with Corey to some extent. What were your thoughts about Dabo then? What are your thoughts about him now? You might not like the comparison, but coaches can have had a reputation of being really good, and things around them change, and you have to start asking questions. With all of that being said, I think you have a guy that knows the culture here. I think you have a guy that knows how to recruit here. And I think you have, obviously, a different head coaching staff that can help. I think you have a better coordinator. I think you have a better front 7 staff that can help out the DB room and getting to the quarterback, which takes a lot of pressure off of your DBs. But I would be remiss to say that, look, in 2019, okay, you had 2 first-round corners. I know that Fulton went in the second, but you get what I'm saying. 2 guys that were elite. Now, I know that Derek Stingley was a freshman. That guy, are you seeing what he's doing in the playoffs right now? My point is that there has been a steady decline. I think Corey has the ability. Now, stay with me, because I know some of you are in the chat are not necessarily agreeing. I do think that Corey 1,000% has the ability to come back here, come back to LSU, and make you back to what you were in DBU. I think that Corey, with that question mark being out there of the last 5 years, could easily mute everything. Mute my concerns. Mute anybody's concerns that you have. But you still have to, number one, hit recruiting and get those guys here, and you have to hit the field and get that better. Can you make that DB room better instantly? You do have some pieces there. Now, how does that room shake up with a new defensive staff? Does Sage Ryan stay at boundary corner? I don't believe that he will. I don't even know if Javian Toviano stays at boundary corner. But you do have some young pieces that you can work around and you can build around. And if you are a true developer, you can get those guys to a next level. You're really young in that room. You're very young in that room. Javian Toviano is going to be a sophomore. You're bringing in a crap load of freshmen. I do think that there is a potential maybe that you're not done completely at the boundary or even in the slot at corner. What does a guy like Trey Amos do? But Corey could mute any concerns that I have, you have, or anybody has by coming back and bringing back DBU. I did think it was funny that a couple of, and I didn't bring it up on the show. I know a lot of you asked. One thing that I will say is I do think that there is a chance. Well, how do I want to word this? Brian Kelly did not retain Blake Baker or Corey Raymond. Now, I will tell you this too. One note to bring in here. The Corey Raymond deal is not completely done. It probably does get there, but it is not finalized. Now, Wilson Alexander just reported that as well. If Corey Raymond is ultimately that guy, those are my concerns. Let me read this very quickly because it just got sent it. Wilson Alexander of The Advocate says, one thing to note that may not being noteworthy, but more than just procedure, a deal between LSU and Corey Raymond is not done, sources said. Probably gets there, but it is not finalized. Just wanted to throw that in there. But those are my concerns. HVL's dump truck. Jesus. Why? Why do you have to put that? Like, thank you for the super chat. It says Corey Raymond was the architect of DBU. Actually, Ron Cooper was the architect of DBU. Ron Cooper was. So yeah. Come on, man. Don't make me read that out loud. Don't make me read that out loud. Go Tigers says, I love how track records don't matter if it's the last 5 years. The teams you were on sucked. Okay, so let's talk about that. Does it matter that Corey Raymond's last 5 teams that he was on, or, well, actually, the last 5 teams that Corey Raymond was on, to your point, Go Tigers, they didn't suck. One of those teams won a national title, and you were 51st in the country with 2 first-round corners. Christian Fulton was second round, but you get what I mean. You also had a guy like Cordell Flott that would get to the league, and he recruited him. Can't take that away from him. Cannot take that away from him. I just do think that there's something to be said. What are your thoughts on Dabo? What are your thoughts on coaches that in 2015, 2016 had lots of success, and now you have a different opinion of them? Like, what would your thoughts be? If you think that you're not having a concern, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to back off me having the concern there. I'm just not going to do it. Can Corey come here again? Wilson Alexander reporting that the deal is not completely done. Can he come back here? Can Corey Raymond come back to LSU and bring back DBU and the greatness that you had on defense? Yes. But again, as we mentioned, 51st in 2019 in passing yards allowed, 127th in 2020, 91st in 21, 74th in 22, and 70th in 23. Why do you believe that I should not have my concern? A lot of you like him. And look, some of you will be passive-aggressive, take to Twitter and say, oh, well, Blake said this. I don't mind him coming back here. That's not my point. But if you want to be objective, that's it. That's me being what I see to be objective. Look, let me say this, Go Tigers, that's in the chat. Okay? If he comes back here and has lots of success, do you really think that I would hate it? Again, I understand the Dabo comparison. It's just one of many. It is apples to oranges. I told you earlier it was apples to oranges. But you got to take what you've seen over the last couple of years. If I told you, let me just ask this question. If I told you there's another coach that's out there, let's just say it was the Alabama DB's coach, okay? If it was the Alabama's DB's coach that had all the same success that Corey did, but at Alabama, but the last 5 years, and I read that exact thing off to you, what would your opinion be? You know what your opinion would be. I'm not bringing this up on screen. I appreciate the super chat. He says, sorry, Blake, I'm just really excited for LSU. It's not necessarily that I'm not mad at you or anything. I'm just not going to – I think there's a level of professionalism. I'm just not going to read your name. I appreciate the super chats. You can continue to send them. I'm just not going to read them on this show, man. I'm just not going to read them on this show. Jarvis Harmon says secondary looks good with Zy Alexander, J.K. Johnson, Ashton Stamps will be the starters. Well, here's the thing. Zy Alexander is injured and might not be back until the middle part of the year next year with a torn ACL. J.K. Johnson, we have not seen play at LSU. Ashton Stamps, I do think, showed a lot of promise, at least for me, when we were at practice. So I brought this up, during when we went to LSU's practice during the bowl prep. And there were multiple times that he went up against a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. He dropped a pick. He batted another pass down. LSU then put out a video on social media of Ashton Stamps catching an interception on Garrett Nussmeier that was on Brian Thomas Jr. So I do think that we've seen times where he has shown promise. But I have question marks with some of the things that you have currently at LSU. Look, you got to prove it to people. I don't think that there's anything wrong with coming out here and saying there are things that you have to prove after what you did a year ago. You can't just always say, oh, well, we have that guy. Well, we have this guy. Well, we have that guy. You know what you did that with last year? Mason Smith's return. Mekhi Wingo's return. We thought that our defensive line would be pretty solid and good. Guys, it wasn't. You can blame Matt House for a lot of things. You're right. I think schematically this team was not coached well. I think he was a cancer in the locker room and could not reach players. But there does come a time when you line up and your opponent lines up across from you and you run basic zone reads that when you're getting blown off the ball, that doesn't have shit to do with Matt House. Not a damn